My name is Paul Wright, and I am proud to be the director of the Berkeley Energy and Climate Institute. It's so wonderful to see so many of my faculty colleagues in the room, Chris Somerville, for example. Chris. It's wonderful to see many visitors from around the world. Nadia Mezi, professor from École de Mines in Paris, for example, and there are many others around here. This is a very exciting time for us, and actually to see so many people in the auditorium at 5 o'clock, 5:30 is very special. Thank you for being here to you. And the next job for me to say is that without the Department of Energy and their sponsorship of this Cleantech University Prize, we would not be here. So I'd like to thank them for their work and for their devotion to clean tech and new companies that you're going to hear about tonight. We're also pleased in the fact that this organization of Becky, with its energy prizes, very carefully interacts with every one of the other units on campus that do some kind of clean tech development, notably the C2M folks who are in the front row here, and also with the Citrus with the Citrus Foundry that we founded some time ago, the Skydeck organization, the other Haas environmental group that do entrepreneurship. And so there's a number of ecosystems that we interact with, and it also includes actually the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab Cyclotron Road project, where we have many good friends. So you're going to hear 7 groups tonight make their pitch, and I'm looking forward to them. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure they're with great anticipation, because $100,000, that's a lot of money for anybody in this room, I think. And we're looking forward to see who the winner would be. My next job is just to briefly thank Sean Waihira, who's the program director and manager of the Cleantech University Prize. Let's give him a round of applause. He has interacted, of course, with our Berkeley Energy and Resources Collaborative, many of whom are in the room tonight. And this is a tight collaboration between Berk and the DOE, and the way we structured the contract is for Sean to be the program director. He is now going to come up and introduce our wonderful judges that are in the front row. Thank you for doing this. It's really nice to see you all. And I'll hand over to Sean. Please come up, and we'll give you another round of applause just to embarrass you. With that, I'm just going to sit down and thoroughly enjoy myself. So it's very nice to see you.
Always a pleasure. Good evening, everybody. I can use the podium too. Good evening, everybody. And if we could activate mic 1, that'd be helpful. Thank you so much. We're good? All right. Thank you so much. Welcome to the very first Berkeley Cleantech University Prize. I just wanted to quickly say thank you to everybody in this room, as one way or another. The teams, the judges, my absolutely fantastic advisory board, the sponsors, the partners. This whole program is been put together by a huge collaborative effort from a lot of people from within the ecosystem and throughout the entire region. So I really just want to thank all of you for making this actually possible. Next, I would like to briefly introduce each of our judges. Could introduce themselves far better than I could in many ways. So I was going to offer this microphone to each of our 6 judges here in the front to quickly introduce themselves such that we know who is evaluating our fantastic 7 teams. And from there, we're going to randomly select each of our 7 teams to give a 7-minute pitch with 5 minutes of Q&A from each of our judges from there. So we'll get started with an introduction of the judges. And again, thank you all for joining us tonight.
Hi, everybody. Rick Moss from Better Ventures. We're a seed fund focused at the intersection of social impact and technology. And we've backed teams out of Cal like Lead Genius and Echo Devices, and in the energy space, companies like SunFunder and Utility API and BrightCurrent.
Feel free to stand up.
Okay, I'll just stand. Hi there, my name's Nancy Rader. I run the California Wind Energy Association. I've been in wind energy for 25 years, so don't know too much about technology, they're mostly policy.
And hi, I'm Jen Garson from the U.S. Department of Energy. I'm the program manager for the 9 different competitions that'll be running between now and June for the Cleantech University Prize. Also work in incubators and other activities in entrepreneurship for our technology to market team within the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Excited to hear you all pitch.
like the most awkward transitions possible. Hi, I'm Doug Davenport. I'm the CEO of Prospect Silicon Valley. We work with startups in commercializing technology in the transportation space, the energy space, buildings, and other aspects of cities. We also develop projects, and so we're working with partners in the Bay Area and about 50 cities right now in areas such as electric vehicle charging, fleets, zero net energy buildings, and other things like that. So these become opportunities for the people that we support. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Thank you, Doug. Again, thank you, Sean. Marvelous job making all this possible, and thank you, Paul, for your Becky leadership. I'm Brian Steele. I'm one of the two co-directors of Cleantech to Market, along with my marvelous colleague, Bev Alexander here. And we assist early-stage endeavors in commercializing clean technology. The program started 8 years ago at Berkeley Lab, when it was all kind of stuff on the whiteboard for the most part, a few bench-scale prototypes. And today we're doing a lot of work with existing startups, and arguably our largest feeder channel for new projects is ARPA-E in the DOE. So the program has evolved a lot, and we're in the middle of accepting applications for this year's cohort, and that application period ends on March 2nd. So I hope we'll see some of you in the application pool this year as well. Thank you.
And I'm the other co-director, Bev Alexander. Brian's done such a good job of describing C2M. I'll say a little bit more about my past. Prior to coming to Berkeley, I ran all the clean energy programs at PG&E. And before that, I was an environmental attorney. So I've been in doing energy and environment work for about 30 years.
All right, thank you very much, judges. So having, Harry Potter has a sorting hat, I have a sorting pocket, and it has selected EV Match as our first team to be presenting this evening. So a big round of applause for EV Match, and thank you so much. Get started.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. My name is Heather Hochrein, and this is Erin Williamson, and we are with EV Match. EV Match is an innovative sharing platform for electric vehicle charging. EV Match will increase the number of EV chargers on the map, therefore supporting more EVs on the road. So we know that most Americans currently see convenient and reliable EV charging as a major barrier to EV ownership. We know that many EV owners park on the street and they don't have access to charging at home. We also know that many folks live in rental properties and their landlords won't allow them to install charging stations, even if they offer to pay. Public charging is often very pricey and unreliable. And we also know that it's expensive to install at-home charging, and these stations are often underutilized. But the biggest challenge, and the reason why we're here today, is because of the massive impacts of gasoline vehicles on both the environment and human health. Electric vehicles have zero tailpipe emissions and have the ability to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, especially when coupled with clean energy sources. But in order to increase the number of EVs on the road, we must address these pressing customer issues. Despite these challenges with EV adoption, public policy is heavily focused on increasing the number of zero-emission vehicles. Here in California, Governor Brown has a program, the ZEV program, that aims to put 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025. And as you can see here, 80% of those vehicles are expected to be battery electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Now, these plug-in vehicles have seen rapid technological advances and are continually improving. So it's no surprise that a recent market report from Goldman Sachs shows an expected 37% annual growth rate of EVs over the next 10 years. EV Match is poised to take advantage of this rapid increase in market and will scale quickly. There are several key trends that show the need for EV Match. We need 7 times more EVs on the road in California by 2025 in order to meet our California state goals. We also know that there's only 1 public charging station for every 10 EVs on the road. And experts and EV owners alike will tell you this is simply not enough. Most EV owners right now currently charge at home, but we also know that many Americans don't have this option. 37% of US households live in rental properties. 37, and 40% of residents in San Francisco and Los Angeles live in apartments. We also know that when people don't have access or can't afford something, they share. 2 in 5 Americans have used services through the sharing economy. That's over 86 million people. And that's exactly what EV Match is proposing, to apply the efficiencies of the sharing economy to the need for EV charging. So here's our value. EV Match will provide a connection for hosts and users. Hosts are owners of residential charging infrastructure who are willing to share access. Users are EV drivers looking for more convenient and reliable charging options. EV Match will connect the two sides of the market and allow for an efficient transaction. We will provide a revenue stream for our hosts and increase their return on investment. On the other side, we'll provide convenient and reliable charging to EV drivers. Now, hosts can have multiple users, and users can have multiple hosts. And hosts can even be users themselves. And through the creation of a network of charging options, EV Match will increase the efficiency and the convenience of EV charging. Now, Erin's going to tell you a little bit more about how it works.
Thanks, Heather. EV Match is currently working with a developer to create an online web application that will connect those hosts and those users on both sides of the platform. Users will be able to find EV charging through our mapping system, reserve through our calendaring system, and pay through our mobile payment processing platform. Then they're ready to charge. Hosts will be provided with a suggested price for each transaction based on our proprietary charging algorithm, which will incorporate variables such as the host's utility rate structure and the user's electric vehicle battery capacity. And EV Match will take a % markup off of each transaction as our own revenue stream. Through our extensive customer research, EV Match has identified 5 key characteristics of our service that will provide hosts and users the best EV experience possible. First, we'll provide that reservation system, allowing drivers to know exactly where and when they'll be charging, saving valuable time and money. 2, we've heard time and time again that public charging is very pricey, so we'll need to be low cost. Third, we'll need to provide a security platform. So we'll implement a robust liability policy as well as a rating system like you've seen on other sharing platforms such as Airbnb. We'll also capitalize on the community building that EV chargers have already been doing and will continue to do as EV driving numbers increase. And lastly, we'll provide that payment processing platform as a value add over some of the other existing EV platforms out there to add legitimacy to the transaction and also to provide that revenue stream to those hosts. So we'll capitalize on those market trends and leverage our lean business model, which features high gross margin and low initial capital expenditure to go to market and scale quickly. Here's a timeline of some of our current activities. We've already started extensive marketing and customer acquisition, and we'll plan to continue to do that to reach capacity. We've already actually even made a few matches in our pilot project in Santa Barbara. We're currently in the process of developing that web app and A/B testing, and we plan to launch it within the next 6 months. Again, as I mentioned before, we'll implement that liability policy to make sure that both sides are secure. And we'll continue to develop key partnerships with auto manufacturers, other EV stakeholders, and folks in the tech startup world. And then lastly, we'll look to target our market, which the first expansion is going to be the San Francisco Bay Area. The EV Match team is 4 Masters of Environmental Science and Management students at the Bren School at UC Santa Barbara. We bring varied experience across the industry and are actively working with our advisory board to deepen industry ties and to give us guidance on the startup process. So why EV Match? EV Match's solution is at the intersection of cleaner electricity, the growth of grid-connected vehicles, and the sharing economy. EV Match will lead the charge in providing reliable, affordable, and convenient charging for EV drivers, and will accelerate the clean energy economy. Thanks everybody for joining us, and at this point I'd like to invite our teammates Kelsey and Shannon up to answer some questions.
Big round of applause.
So these,
I have a quick question.
yes.
My charger is inside my garage, and I would feel nervous about opening it up to a wide variety of who's going to come, do I trust them in my garage, et cetera, et cetera. Comments on that?
Yeah, definitely. This is something that we've heard time and time again from potential customers, although it is interesting to note that our actual pilot participants did not have that issue. We asked them if they were concerned about security, and all of them said no. But it is something that we hear time and time again, and so we are definitely planning to implement a robust liability policy, as well as initially we're going to be building in a rating system into our application so that you'll be able to see who is requesting to charge. And with each request, you are able to either accept or deny. So if you see individuals who have had previous, bad history with other charging interactions, you can deny their request. You can, exactly.
Just kind of picking up on that, because I had a similar set of questions. In your pilot project, can you describe a little bit more about the status, and are people in Santa Barbara right now opening their garages to strangers on the network and so on?
Yeah, so currently we have 13 people signed up for our pilot project in Santa Barbara. 8 are hosts and 4 are users. 5 are users, excuse me. And currently we have 2 matches going on. I guess just to lay out a little bit of what those 2 matches look like. One is between a professional who has a Chevy Volt in downtown Santa Barbara. He walks about 10 blocks to his host location. And it's great for him because he actually gets to charge and get his car off the street for street parking during those time frames. We worked with the host to identify what would be the adequate amount of electricity or adequate amount of pricing to cover his electricity costs. And he actually ended up deciding as the host to charge up premium because he's located in downtown and his user can charge there and avoid parking. So we're hoping to ultimately kind of establish a marketplace where the hosts do recognize the value of the location, and even if they have solar, that host I speak of also had solar, and so he charged about 50 cents per hour, I think was what we ended up on, and that gave him about a 20 cents margin in terms of covering his electricity costs. So.
Hi, I have a quick question. So Tesla has a new program specifically with Airbnb where they're installing charging stations across the country. Have you guys been talking at all to either Airbnb or to Tesla on connecting up with the infrastructure charging network that they're deploying? Or are you looking to piggyback with any other potential options where people are already having some sort of sharing economy associated with their charging station to try to optimize your next coming pilots, say, with those kind of partners?
The Tesla, I actually was not aware of that, but thank you for filling us in, and we'll definitely look into that further. We, at the moment, do realize, though, that there is a large issue with the fragmentation of current charging resources. So Tesla is building a network, ChargePoint is building a network, PlugShare is building a network. And one of the things that we're really trying to do with our solution is to address that fragmentation. And so in these last few days, actually, we've been in contact with Google to try and integrate our application into Google Maps and to see how that can work. And we would actually be a third-party data layer in the existing Google Map infrastructure, so that when you type in charging for an electric vehicle, our stations would also pop up.
And I'll just add one thing regarding the Tesla infrastructure. The Tesla chargers are actually not compatible with any of the other EVs on the road, and so that would be an issue going forward in terms of all the other, the Chevy Bolt and every other EV that's looking to come to market, is that it's just simply doesn't work.
Well done, guys. The deck is really well designed, and I think you presented a good, clear problem and a good, clear solution to that that's differentiated. Can you say a bit about pricing? How do you charge? How much do you make from that? And how did you decide those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have developed and are currently refining a pricing algorithm that will be built into the application. And essentially what we do is we suggest a price to the host that takes into several data points, including the voltage of their charger, the battery capacity of the user, and we essentially, and the utility rate structure. So we have built in specific time of use rate structures for each of the investor-owned utilities in California. And then essentially our pricing algorithm will present to them a price that costs for the electricity, and then the host has the ability to mark up that price by a certain percentage. And so our financial models right now expect a 15% markup for the host, and then EV Match will take a 15% mark off over the total charging transaction. And we are testing out that percent markup with our pilot project. So all of our participants are asked after they participate for a month what they would be willing to pay in terms of a percent markup. And we are hearing 12% is what we've been hearing primarily. And so we are looking at different pricing options based on the research we collect.
Wonderful, thank you. Another big round of applause for EV Match. Thank you very much. All right, and the next team that was selected is going to be Blue Forest Conservation. All right.
Thank you. Hi. Here's a pretty startling fact. Each year, approximately $50 billion is spent protecting the environment, the vast majority of which is from public and philanthropic sources. Yet the best estimates indicate that over $300 billion is actually needed. So the question is, where are we going to find the remaining $250 billion each year to fund climate resilience? As a team of investors and environmentalists, we have developed the Forest Resilience Bond, which will enable private capital to invest in forest health, generating environmental, social, and financial returns. And while we may not be your typical clean tech startup, our capital light and quick to market platform is perfectly suited to have an immediate impact on some of our most pressing climate challenges. Forests play a very important role in mitigating drought and climate change by storing carbon and accumulating snowpack for water resources. Small, naturally occurring fires rejuvenate the ecosystem and thin excess vegetation, resulting in healthy forests like you see above from 1929. However, in an effort to protect communities, the Forest Service adopted a policy that all fires should be avoided, causing forests to become significantly overgrown and unhealthy with up to 10 times as many trees as nature intended, as you see in the 2008 representation. Combine that with an increasingly hotter and drier climate, and you end up with tinderbox conditions that made 2015 the worst fire season on record. The 2013 Yosemite Rim Fire, for example, emitted 11 million metric tons of greenhouse gases. That's equivalent to the annual emissions of 2.3 million cars, which could have been avoided through preventative measures such as forest restoration. Compared to the overgrowth that you see on the left, a restored forest has a more natural tree density, maximizing snowpack for water resources such as water utilities and hydroelectricity generation, while also decreasing the risk of severe fire. In fact, Agriculture Secretary Vilsack, who oversees the Forest Service, has endorsed the multifaceted benefits of forest restoration, as well as a multi-stakeholder funding approach. Quote, "You get multiple benefits from this. When you do it holistically, when you do it collaboratively, you are essentially going to get a bigger bang for your buck." But unfortunately, right now, the Forest Service is responsible for funding 100% of restoration costs up front, an already heavy budgetary burden for the government agency. At the same time, wildfire suppression costs have consistently gone over budget, creating a vicious cycle in which the Forest Service is fighting today's fires with the funds designed to prevent tomorrow's. These two factors combined ensure that the Forest Service can only address a fraction of its massive restoration backlog. Blue Forest transforms this funding crisis into an investment opportunity by creating a platform in which beneficiaries, such as the utilities and the Forest Service, share in the costs just as they share in the benefits. Currently, there's no mechanism in place to connect the ecosystem services of forest restoration to private investor capital, which is a vast untapped resource. And while forest restoration itself is not necessarily new or innovative, our platform is. The Forest Resilience Bond is a streamlined solution of measurement, contracting, and financing that bridges the gap between investor capital and forest restoration. Our proprietary measurement and evaluation toolkit will quantify the benefits accruing to multiple stakeholders. Stakeholder contracts will then outline how these benefits are monetized as payments. And finally, the financial vehicle will convert contractual payments into returns for investors. This innovative approach is a feasible and scalable roadmap to dramatically transform and improve the health of our forests, protecting them as one tool among many to fight climate change.
So let's take a closer look at how this all works. The Forest Resilience Bond accelerates restoration work by allowing private investors to fund the upfront costs of restoration. utility beneficiaries sign 10-year contracts which assign a value to the independently measured and verified results. As positive environmental benefits such as reduced wildfire risk and improved water quality and quantity are generated, monetized outcomes are shared between the Forest Service and utilities in the form of cost savings and investors in the form of market rate returns. As we mentioned earlier, the Forest Service is not able to complete restoration treatments to meet its own targets. In 2014, the agency restored 1 million acres of land, yet the Forest Service itself has identified over 58 million acres at high or very high risk of wildfire. This translates to a $40 billion opportunity across the United States, $5 billion of which is right here in California. But Blue Forest's unique cost-sharing platform is poised to make this market a reality. An often overlooked benefit of forest restoration is its positive impact on hydropower generation, a low-cost and carbon-free energy source that is already in place to provide up to 30% of California's energy needs. However, in the midst of this severe drought, hydropower has been severely underutilized, and carbon-emitting natural gas generation has been ramped up to fill the void. Forest restoration can help remedy this unfortunate trade-off by making watersheds more productive systems, which means better utilized hydropower assets and lower carbon emissions. In fact, increasing California's hydro volumes by just 10% over the historically low 2014 levels would avoid over 750,000 metric tons of CO2 from natural gas each year. We are confident that our team possesses the diverse skill sets necessary to make Forest Resilience Bond a reality. But we are also seeking partners to accelerate our time to market. In fact, we have secured pro bono legal counsel to assist with contract development, are in the process of finalizing partnerships with leading environmental NGOs, are serving as the principal investigator on a grant led by the Rockefeller Foundation, and are engaging UC Berkeley's top hydrology and forestry experts. We have secured letters of support from the U.S. Forest Service itself, the California Governor's Office, utilities, and others as we pursue an SBIR grant. This combined network of support provides us with a sustainable competitive advantage as our relationships and forest resilience bond technologies will be very challenging to replicate. Our stakeholders are very optimistic about the future of the Forest Resilience Bond, not just because of the potential scale and impact, but because we are already well on our way to bringing this capital-light platform to market. We are currently in discussions with the Forest Service to implement a pilot by the end of this year and plan to start scaling forest restoration more broadly across the Western U.S. shortly thereafter. Your support now will help unlock billions of dollars of capital in the fight against climate change.
Thank you.
We look forward to your questions.
Hi. I can imagine two things that could put at risk your returns not materializing. One is I read that we're in one of the more extreme tree die-off scenarios that we've ever seen in the history of California. That could get even worse with increased drought and other types of situations. Also, with if rainfall does fall off dramatically, you won't get as much action going on in the hydro system. So if these really big things happen, how are you going to generate returns?
That's great. So to start out with some of the pilot projects, there could be more of a fixed payment from the utilities, understanding some of the risk over those 10-year benefits. That would help moderate some of the volatility.
Yeah, and from a piloting perspective, we know that the governor is actively trying to attack some of those areas, and that's likely where our first pilot is going to be, and we're going to have that site nailed down in the next 2 months or so.
You mentioned some of the progress, and it looks like excellent progress across the board. I don't recall a major financial services firm name up there. So I'm curious in terms of kind of the history of this. Is there an analog to this approach that's being employed in other countries? And if so, are the financial markets already somewhat familiar with analogous approaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, sorry for as we're flying through here. What actually really got us started in this space was the Morgan Stanley Sustainable Investing Challenge that we won last year. As part of the research for that, we went and actually have spoken to every one of the big banks on Wall Street. And I think the best analog for this are some of what you've seen in the social impact bond world, where they've tried to reduce recidivism, homelessness, early childhood education to avoid the cost of special education and others. This is actually the first application of that in the environmental space, and that's gotten a lot of people in DC excited, and then a lot of people on Wall Street in New York.
This slide shows there is a track record for some public-private partnerships between the Forest Service and utilities where there's great interest in that. But we're talking to the financial sectors as well as part of the customer outreach for
So they've done cost sharing before, as you see in some of these situations, or there have been ballot measures to fund this. Ours will be the first opportunity to have pension funds, insurance companies, and private investors actually fund this work on an upfront basis.
So can you talk a little bit more about how you're actually calculating the monetization of the savings? Because it seems that it might be really difficult to ascertain the exact savings as a result of some of the actions taken on restoring forests.
Absolutely. So great question. There's quite a few models that hydrologists use for estimating increased water flow. Some out of California, UC Santa Barbara has a popular model called RESIS that our hydrologist partner that we're working on the SBIR grant application for uses to estimate modeled outputs of increased water. The benefit is, although we might be, some of the research suggests up to a 15 or 16% increase in flow in a watershed when the restoration occurs. It also provides the fire benefits, fire reduction benefits, is that a far discount of the value to that utility could be charged, where if they're getting a 16% increase in flow, they may be paying a very small amount of that and willing to tolerate some of the imprecision of a model that's not going to measure exactly how many acre feet additionality that you would occur.
And from the fire side, because I think this is part of your question as well, about 12 months ago when we started working with the Forest Service, we said, you're going to make some payment 10 years down the road that's going to be a modeled benefit to you from the fire suppression. That didn't work for the pension funds that we've spoken to. It doesn't work for the Forest Service. So what we're really going to make this look like is an infrastructure financing or a project finance deal where those folks will put in on a cost sharing agreement money on a 10-year basis, which gives us more steady cash flows, allows us to have these real debt and equity tranches as we put this funding together. And from an investor standpoint, you very clearly see as the restoration happens, you see that cash flow coming in. So a little bit more security than the first round of this model.
This is so complex. It seems like there's so many layers of complexity here. And I guess just one that comes to mind is water rights. I mean, there's not a pipe from the source to the, so how do you, once it gets into the water system, how do you deal with the water rights?
Great question. So the water rights within some watersheds are quite a lot simpler than other watersheds. In some watersheds, there's senior water rights holders that don't have their full allocation. In the case of hydropower, a lot of those aren't a consumptive water right, so they have the access for generating additional hydropower and then downstream further consumption. That's a watershed case-by-case basis, and we've identified some that are interested because they're senior water right holders.
So you used a very, is this working? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so you used a very important word. You said additionality. Mm-hmm. So I know you know a little bit about this. So what I'm going to ask you is, the benefit that is being created, right, has to be that's where you get the return, obviously.
Absolutely.
So what are you doing to verify that the benefit that's out there is matchable to what what the investor has invested in? In other words, how you verify you're going to get that return?
Sure.
Because there's a lot of variables you can't control here.
That's right.
That's right. So using the modeled output from RESIS or whatever the utilities, which are going to be the payors, are comfortable using to estimate what the modeled increase in water is. You can't stick a meter stick in a rating curve for a stream and say 3% more flow or 5% more flow. But there's generally accepted models that in the negotiation to form those contracts, in part, which could be based on a fixed payment rather than a variable payment based on outputs, especially for something like a pilot, could create that return without some of the variable measurement questions that a pilot can help demonstrate further on.
So you're saying the models are baked into the contracts?
That's right.
That's right.
Okay.
A big round of applause again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next team is Numbo.
Good evening. My name is Liam, and this is Numbo. Numbo has developed the world's best hydrophobic coating, which we are using to make air conditioning 25 to 30% more efficient. So first, I'd like to introduce Omniphobe. Omniphobe is a hydrophobic and oleophobic coating, meaning it repels both water and oil. That video in the top right that looks like a ball rolling across the surface, that is actually a water droplet rolling and sliding across a surface that has been coated in Omniphobe. This is the best super hydrophobic performance in the world, from industry to academia. And further, because our surface repels both water and oil, it is self-cleaning. This means that the normal physical labor and capital costs associated with maintaining certain surfaces are a thing of the past. And finally, Omniphobe has been developed to be applied to any geometry at any scale. We utilize safe, non-toxic chemicals in a dirt-cheap dip coat process to coat whatever we want. So what is it good for? Air conditioning. From residential to commercial, air conditioning has many inefficiencies. This is in large part due to a piece called the cooling coil. Now, think of a cooling coil as a stack of finely spaced metal fins. These fins are chilled, and hot, humid air is blown across them. Water from the air will condense on the fin surface and should immediately shed, except it doesn't. Through a process known as water fouling, this water will get stuck to the surface of the fins, immediately lowering the efficiency and leading to further problems. Contaminants from the water can also deposit on the fin surface, leading to mold buildup, fungal infection, dirt and debris buildup over time, which leads to further inefficiencies and lowers the air quality of the building, because those mold spores and fungal particulates can actually redistribute back into the building air supply. According to the US Department of Energy, a dirty cooling coil, such as the one pictured here, can actually result in up to 30% increases in energy consumption costs. So here's how we're going to use Omniphobe to mitigate all of those issues. We're going to take our technology, which can literally bounce droplets off of a surface it's been applied to, and we're going to put it on those cooling coils found inside of an air conditioner. The benefit here will be twofold. One, we will have a baseline increase in efficiency because we will have the first cooling coil ever to run dry, immediately shedding water as it condenses. And we will drastically reduce the rate of contaminant buildup, thereby leading to an increased and sustained near maximal efficiency. Because HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, accounts for almost 5% of the entire nation's energy consumption and almost $11 billion in electricity costs, we believe Omniphobe has the potential to lower electricity costs by $3 billion and save up to 10 million tons of emitted carbon dioxide per year. Also, I'd like to direct your attention back to this bouncing droplet. So as it bounces elastically on the surface and then slides off the side, please look at the very bottom. You're looking for a small dust particle right there. That is the self-cleaning property of Omniphobe. That self-cleaning lets us cut maintenance costs at least in half. So the first step in taking Omniphobe to market is going to be setting up a strategic partnership with one of these large air conditioning manufacturers, Carrier, Trane, Goodman, just to name a few. This partner will be our customer, and as you can see, the market is favorably distributed such that the competitive advantage of Omniphobe will be valuable to any one of these companies. As a part of this partnership, we'd like to initially coat one product line of cooling coils, where we believe we can bring in $100 of value per coated coil. Based on the average number of cooling coils produced for the main product lines at each of these firms, this would result in a $30 million revenue stream for one product line at one company per year. This $30 million lies within a larger total accessible market of roughly $5 billion, which represents the global cooling coil coatings market. And here are a couple of the other competitors within that market. Now, the critical difference between the Numbo and all of these other companies is that these firms manufacture anti-corrosive coatings. These are coatings that are designed to purely extend the lifetime and durability of the cooling coil. However, to do this, they use polymer-based coatings, which actually lowers the efficiency and drives your energy costs up. Omniphobe doesn't have this issue. We have the first cooling coil coating ever designed to make water shed, thereby running your cooling coil dry, increasing efficiency, increasing air quality, and increasing fin durability and resistance. So that $5 billion total addressable market lies within a larger global HVAC market of almost $140 billion. And there are two primary reasons we're entering this market first. One, Omniphobe has been optimized for heat transfer surfaces, and the cooling coil is a textbook example of one of these. And two, we believe the barriers to entry in this market are far lower, mainly due to the fact that there is a massive number of cooling coils produced every year, meaning that it should be easier to convince these manufacturers to adopt our technology on some of their product lines. That being said, we don't think this is the end of the road for Omniphobe or Numbo. We believe we can have an impact on the protective, antimicrobial, and, somewhat obviously, also the hydrophobic coatings markets. So finally, here's our team. We represent a combined total of 50 years of research and development experience from industry to academia, 10 years of executive experience, and 2 successful startup companies. We are currently in the process of coating a cooling coil for a 5-ton air conditioning unit on the top of Satarjadai Hall, a hall on Berkeley's campus, which we have partnered with the campus to do so and received permission from the Energy and Sustainability Council. We are currently in talks with both JTC and Bosch concerning further technological validation of Omniphobe, and they are currently in the process of vetting our tech. We have a US-based provisional patent filed on our technology and are currently writing the full utility patent and then moving forward to license the technology from the university, which will allow us to finalize a partnership with one of those air conditioning manufacturers I mentioned. And finally, we are always refining our market strategy based on various indicators we have throughout the industry, and we really think we've hit a market resonance with these mid-sized commercial air conditioning units. Thank you very much for your time, and if anyone is interested in seeing a live interactive demo of our technology, please come to the expo afterwards. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Lance to the stage so we can take your questions.
So I can start off if that's okay. Mm-hmm. So home air conditioners, not exactly a high margin business, right?
Correct.
So it's going to be highly competitive. My question for you, because you didn't quite address it, is have you looked at what this coating kind of takes away from existing margin and how you propose to help your supplier win that back? Okay?
So when looking at the competitiveness of the market and some of the new DOE regulations that have been put back in place, increasing the minimum SEER, there are a few strategies that could be implemented by our strategic partner and hopefully our customer, and that they could put our coating on, let's say, their 10 SEER unit. And we have not tested this, but one thing they could do is this could increase it to the minimum regulation now, which is 13 SEER. So if we could allow them to not change their manufacturing process, that would be a big win for them. Additionally, as Liam mentioned, it is a highly competitive market. So there's a distribution, and it's always carrier and train going back and forth to reach the high-end market. And if we could push them over the edge, that's another big benefit also. So.
Can you talk a little bit about the additional cost, though, of applying the coating? Because I think that gets to the kind of the margins question.
So to give you a ballpark idea, we've done the calculations for the cooling coil on the top of Satarjadai Hall. It's a $4,000 cooling coil, and we can coat it for roughly $10.
So, dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Dirt cheap.
Well, actually, can you talk about the manufacturing process then? How are you currently?
It's literally a
producing the coating?
2-stage dip coat process. So we can take our cooling coil, we can put it in one chemical, we remove it, we put it in a second chemical. The only limiting factor is the size of the tank, infinitely scalable.
You indicated other markets there as well, and you also said that your product was currently optimized for heat transfer surfaces. What changes would need to be made to allow you to access some of these other markets that were not as heat transfer oriented?
So we choose HVAC here because we have the primary edge because our coating is thermally conductive. Modifications for the different markets are going to be more the time required for the dip coat. So it is a growth process, meaning that if we needed, let's say, hit the industrial heat exchanger market where corrosion is the primary thing, we'd probably need a thicker coating just for durability issues. Antimicrobial, we could probably hit directly now. Protective, that market share includes things like paints, which would be much more difficult, so we probably couldn't take the entire market. And hydrophobic coatings, we could move into now.
Basically, so another point on that. So the reason we're moving into HVAC is because we have the first coating ever, which can be applied to a cooling coil that is hydrophobic and can also preserve the heat transfer process. So you're not lowering the efficiency by adding the coating. So you get the twofold benefit.
Great job, guys. I really like the bouncing water ball. That thing's money.
Said back to that, so everyone can take a look.
And I like that it's got kind of a narrow focus initially, but broad applications later. I like also that it's very commercial, and you're throwing around tens of billions of dollars type numbers. So sounds like kind of some low-hanging fruit. Can you talk about can you build a whole company in its full life cycle on one surface coating material, or where does it go from product A?
So we're initially starting, and this is a longer question. Actually, I'd like to have a discussion with you about this afterwards. But the initial IP can grow, and so we have a base IP on top of what we've started with. But we have a lot of room for expansion, and there's multiple variations of the coating which we can employ. The one we're currently pursuing is, of course, the one with the heat transfer properties, but there are different components of the coating itself from the 2 different dip coat processes, which can be applied to other industries. As one example, we have essentially a top coat on the coating that we're putting on, and that top coat can be applied instantly to the iPhone, like an iPhone screen, to make it hydrophobic, and that doesn't take any additional processing. That's an area we could move into.
So are you going to license this then, or are you going to actually manufacture the coating yourselves?
So the way we're looking at it now, which seems to be the easiest way, is the air conditioner units are manufactured by OEMs as given permission by the manufacturers. So what we would like to do is get in this OEM line and do the coating ourselves as an intermediate.
Can we dip our phones at your booth afterward?
I didn't bring the dip in there, but we have the demo.
Yes.
We have the demo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. And our next team will be Cuberg. Thank you. Big round of applause for Cuberg.
Good afternoon. At Cuberg, we're developing batteries that can store twice as much energy as the best lithium-ion batteries in the world. We are really rethinking the way batteries are both designed and manufactured. Now, I think you know why we need better batteries, whether it's a smartphone running out of power in the middle of the day, a drone that only lasts for 20 minutes flight time before it has to come down, or an electric vehicle that either doesn't go far enough or is simply too expensive to afford. We really need better batteries in all of these different industries. Cuberg is developing a battery that can store the same amount of energy in only half the size. This technology can double the battery life of your devices and electric vehicles. In addition, it offers several compelling advantages in terms of safety, as well as durability of cycle life and high temperature operation. So if you look at a conventional battery has 3 major components: a metal oxide cathode, a graphite anode, and most critically, a liquid organic electrolyte. That electrolyte composed of an organic solvent that's extremely flammable, thus leading to a lot of battery fire issues, and it also is chemically unstable and decomposes over time. That really limits the kind of energy we can store in existing battery technology. So what Cuberg is doing is replacing that liquid in your battery with a solid-state electrolyte. We've completely redesigned what a battery looks like. We have developed at Stanford a new material for solid-state electrolytes that's much more stable than liquid organic electrolytes. As a result, this lets us use a lithium metal anode, which is an exceptionally energy-dense material and gives us the kinds of performance advantages we're seeing in the lab. At the same time, we've also come up with a very unique cathode material, a complete system for a solid-state battery that really lets us make something that's high power, practical, bulk, and scalable. These materials are already covered by a provisional patent through Stanford, and we're applying for additional protection, IP protection, for additional materials innovations and processing. In the lab, we've already put together proof of concept cells, validating key metrics of the individual components, and we're now optimizing the processing to put together high-performance prototypes. So if you look at differentiation of different battery technologies, there's a lot of technologies in development. Conventional lithium-ion is pretty easy to manufacture and well optimized at this point. The problem with conventional lithium-ion, not enough performance, not enough energy. There are a lot of companies pursuing approaches such as nanomaterials, for example, to increase energy density, and they do get some modest improvements, but the problem here is one of scaling. Very difficult to synthesize and difficult to process in practical battery manufacturing. There are solid-state battery startups that are adopting a similar approach with a solid-state electrolyte and a lithium metal anode, and they have pretty impressive performance claims. The issue here is always one of manufacturing. Nobody in the world has figured out how to scalably manufacture a practical solid-state battery at cost. So Cuberg's key innovation is really on our deep materials R&D. We've developed a whole new entire system of materials that not only allow us to put together high-performance batteries, unlike that seen in other solid-state systems, but also materials with key processing advantages. Very low-cost precursors, easy synthesis at room temperature and air, and also easy processing in terms of actually depositing the materials onto your battery scalably to actually put it together with existing industrial processes. We've interacted with a wide variety of potential customers, leading consumer electronics companies, major battery companies around the world, and also Tesla Motors. We've gotten a pretty good feel for what people need in batteries in different markets. Based on this understanding, we believe the ideal early adopter market is in consumer drones. They have a severe need for lighter batteries in order to increase the flight time of their drone beyond 20 or 25 minutes. And because we're delivering such a huge value proposition to this industry, we can command a pretty healthy margin. They don't care as much about battery costs as some other industries. At the same time, it's a good early adopter market because it's relatively low volume, but also growing very quickly. So they're very competitive and looking for really new and better battery technology. Not as stringent reliability requirements and performance requirements, so it's good to work with initially. Medium term, we'd like to expand to the broader consumer electronics market. Similar advantages, but of course much larger scale, requiring more investing, and also more requirements for validation in the market of the technology. Ultimately, we want to get to the mass market electric vehicle because this is where the greatest social impact for batteries is and where by far the biggest battery market will be in the future, on the order of hundreds of billions of dollars as the EV industry continues to grow and take over the world. But of course, a very challenging market for startups, very stringent cost controls, extremely high volume requiring billions of dollars in investment for this kind of market, and also extremely stringent performance and reliability requirements across the board. This is our long-term goal. So our business consists of focusing on what we do best, which is deep materials and processing R&D, getting all the technology right, and protecting that with a strong body of IP. At the same time, we'll be partnering with companies, such as consumer electronics companies, to test our prototype batteries and see how they do, getting feedback from them from specs, and also designing them into their next generation of products. Once they can see firsthand the value proposition that we're providing for them, they're going to exert substantial pressure on their suppliers and contract manufacturers, telling them we need these Cuberg's batteries in our next generation of products. At that point, we'll partner with a joint venture with these battery companies or contract manufacturers to help us build out manufacturing lines and really ramp up production to reach the market as quickly as possible. Finally, let me introduce you to our team. My name is Richard Wang. I'm finishing my PhD at Stanford in Materials Science this month. I previously worked at Tesla Motors on battery research, have project management experience from the Solar Decathlon Solar Powered House competition, and got my undergrad degree at Caltech in Materials Science. My co-founder, Mauro Pasta, is currently a professor at the University of Oxford. Previously, he was a postdoc at Stanford for over 4 years, where we worked together extensively on the battery materials. He has previous entrepreneurship experience from Alveo Energy, a grid-scale energy storage company in Palo Alto that's already raised ARPA-E funding and is pretty successful right now, and originally from Italy, having studied at the University of Milan in industrial chemistry. We also have a bunch of strong partners. We're currently working out of Stanford and supported by the Tomcat Center for Sustainable Energy. They've been really instrumental in providing the initial seed funding to take this from the idea stage to the first proof of concept cells in the lab, and have been very helpful for advising us. We're also advised by the CEO at HZO, based out of Utah, which is a leading thin film deposition technology company. And they're really helping with a lot of the commercialization, contacts with consumer electronic companies, and also figuring out the basic manufacturing techniques for our batteries. We're also working up at Lawrence Berkeley Lab at the Molecular Foundry to do a lot of the key materials development work in the beginning of our project. And we're one of the 11 finalists at the prestigious Cyclotron Road project up at Lawrence Berkeley. Mauro and I have 20 years of combined Cleantech R&D experience. We've seen a lot of battery technology come and go, and a lot of things that don't make sense, but Cuberg's technology is really one of the most impressive and interesting that we've seen in a very long time. We hope you'll support us as we embark on this exciting journey. Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about cost?
Sure. So we have a pretty solid cost structure. We actually get substantial cost savings compared to conventional lithium ion. So you can see actually we have substantial savings, especially on the cathode material, because our cathode uses very abundant transition metals such as iron and manganese. At the same time, we don't have a separator. We have very low cost electrolyte, very little bit of lithium metal anode, so we have cost savings across the board. So about 70% reduction of bill of materials compared to conventional lithium ion. At the same time, we're also proving out the processing steps. This is still something in progress, but so far the processing that we've developed has been very low cost, on the order of dollars per kilowatt hour.
The equal power for half the size is obviously very compelling. What about all the other performance metrics that are relevant to batteries?
Sure. Yeah, so
Cyclability, life.
right, exactly. So one of the big advantages of solid state designs is they inherently have much longer stability and cycle life because there's much less degradation and decomposition of that unstable organic electrolyte. So we do anticipate very long cycle life and better durability. Additionally, we think we can actually target some interesting new markets that you can't get with conventional lithium ion, also because of that organic solvent, typically not stable beyond 55 Celsius, whereas our battery systems are usually stable to 100, 150 Celsius. So good for high temperature applications as well. Pretty safe, so less risk of shorting or battery fires, things like that. So a lot of performance advantages.
And what about form factor?
Form factor is also easier. We've actually been talking to someone from Apple, and they've been really telling us that solid-state batteries have a really big advantage even just beyond the chemistry, which is that you can kind of stamp them out and stack them in any sort of shape that you want, and you can save a lot on the packaging volume, and so increase the energy the density that way too.
Can you talk a little bit about your competition? I know you addressed it a bit, but there are several startups out there that are pursuing solid-state batteries like Solid Energy and others.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about your differentiation? I still...
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, obviously their technology is kind of secret, but we've been looking at what they have released publicly so far, and our understanding is still that no one has figured out the manufacturing. We were talking actually earlier to the CTO of Applied Materials, and they invested in Solid Energy, and he was pointing out that they have a pretty impressive prototype, but the problem is still how do you do solid state battery manufacturing? It's really an open question at this point. And I think a lot of the materials out there are problematic because they're fundamentally difficult to process, either very high temperature synthesis or expensive materials or extreme moisture or air sensitivity. So there's a lot of challenges with other solid state battery materials.
What then differentiates your manufacturing process?
So it's really our materials let us use a lot of these techniques that are otherwise not usable by other battery materials. So for example, we can press our materials very easily and densify it and get the kind of properties, whereas for other materials, they have to use vacuum deposition or very high temperature sintering, those kinds of things. So we can also use electrode deposition to get very conformal thin film electrolytes, which are also something you can't do with most other material systems.
I want to compliment you on being our best dressed presenter so far tonight.
Thank you.
Does anyone else agree with that? I think the intersection of the sets of top scientists and good dressers is probably about one person, and so maybe we have him here in front of us today. Can you talk a bit about how much money you think this would take to get to scale? Mm-hmm. As an investor, I look at something like this and think, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. And is there a way to kind of bring revenue forward to fund some of your own development instead of just with cash investment?
So we've actually been working with a very interesting company out of Calgary, developing batteries for a very specific niche application in oil and gas field, high temperature batteries. And they've actually said they're kind of a really good early adopter market because for them, they only need their batteries to last for maybe 200 hours and 5 cycles, and that's it. And then they can get rid of their batteries. Currently, their batteries are non-rechargeable. And so they said if we can deliver high temperature rechargeable batteries, even if it's not optimized and not the perfect battery, it's still really valuable for them. And so that's one way that we could really get revenue, even with our early prototype batteries.
What makes you go for the full battery instead of going for the electrolyte specifically or the anode or the cathode?
So a lot of companies have pursued that approach, but we've seen it as actually kind of a short-sighted approach because people think you can get one material and then integrate it into an existing manufacturing process. But in reality, battery manufacturing is a lot more complicated than that. So whenever people have tried to do that in the past, once you introduce anything new, everything breaks down and you have to kind of figure out what's going on. So especially for solid state, that's a case where there isn't an existing process to integrate it into. So if we just made an electrolyte, it's not good enough because nobody knows how to make the rest of it. It's really a complete new system that we have to develop. Again, big round of applause. Thank you.
Okay. And all the way here from Hawaii, please a big round of applause for Team Ness, who will be our next team to present. So thank you.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Bryce Adams, and I'm from Team Ness. And we are a software-as-a-service platform that's creating smarter homes to stabilize the grid automatically. So in our home state of Hawaii, due to our high dependence on oil and our high PV penetration, we actually have the highest electricity costs in the nation. This is at over twice the national average. And one way that we know we can bring this down is through integrating more renewable energy, such as wind and solar. So in our home state of Hawaii, the integration of such technologies has been growing exponentially in recent years. However, due to problems that we've encountered, such as grid instability and frequency fluctuations, we've had to slow down the integration of such technologies. Ultimately, the Public Utility Commission in Hawaii has set a cap on residential rooftop solar integration, despite its very high demand for systems. So what we have done at Team Nest is we've created a system which stabilizes the grid by adjusting the supply and demand on the grid at a residential level. This bottom-up approach will save energy and money for both the utility and the power consumer, as well as allow for the removal of this cap on rooftop PV integration. So our software as a service platform pairs with our home kit. And what it does is it uses predictive algorithms as well as autonomous control to adjust the load on the grid and allow for stabilization. So when installed in homes, our kit will basically monitor the overall usage of the home as well as autonomously control appliance loads. Shown here is our user interface. It demonstrates our real-time energy data and also allows for analytics as well as our data services. In the top left, you'll see a proof of concept version of our home kit, which consists of a communications gateway, smart energy meter, smart plug, as well as smart inline control device. Using these devices, we'll be able to turn your standard air conditioning unit as well as electric water heater into smart Internet of Things devices. In the future, we look to develop forward compatibility, which would allow you to integrate and control third-party IoT devices such as smart plugs. On the right, you can see our smart energy meter as it is installed in a home, and on the bottom left is an example of data that we've pulled from this energy meter. Using our real-time analytics, we're able to identify which devices are on in a home, as well as provide a number for how much controllable load is available. We are currently in the process of securing a patent with the Office for Technology Transfer at the University of Hawaii on our system. So the two main aspects of our approach that really separates us from our competition is our focus on the residential market, as well as our automated load control for frequency regulation. Two of our big competitors in Hawaii are Shifted Energy as well as Ibis Networks. Shifted Energy focusing on grid interactive water heaters for energy storage, and Ibis Networks being plug level load control and monitoring for office buildings. So these two products are both very good products, but what they don't offer is the automated cloud service control that we do. But however, based on our future compatibility with third-party devices, these are two companies that we might want to work with as a partnership. OhmConnect is a San Francisco-based residential aggregator, but they focus more on peak reduction, which would be the reduction of load to reduce using peak generators, which are actually very expensive, but they don't really focus on frequency regulation. Enernoc is a global demand response aggregator who focuses mainly on large-scale industrial and commercial demand response with no real focus on the residential market. So working with the Hawaiian Electric Company, we will enter into a utility aggregator contract in exchange for our services. And for a fee of about $100, we'll be able to install our kit in residential homes. In return, the utility will gain reliability, grid stability, as well as a controllable load. And our residential customers will gain a cash incentive through Team Nest, as well as access to our data services. So the global demand response market is growing at a rate of about 20% annually for the next 10 years. This will make up a market of $13 billion by 2021. And the demand response market in Hawaii is still developing. And we believe, based on pilot project participation rates, as well as studies done by the utility, that we'll be able to reach about 35,000 households. That's 13% of the 270,000 households on the island of Oahu, which makes up a market share of about $9.6 million. These projections are shown on the right in our financial projections for the Hawaii market. So in the first few years of business, we plan on doing 3 pilot programs, 2 in the residential sector and one at the University of Hawaii. The reason we're doing one at the university is because it allows for rapid, large-scale testing with easy access to our hardware. During the pilot program years, we plan to work with Accelerate UH program, as well as develop our relationship with the Hawaiian Electric Company, with whom we've already had multiple conversations about our technology. Moving forward, we plan to enter the Energy Accelerator program, as well as enter into the utility aggregator contract at a scale of about 2,500 households. From there, we plan to expand to the outer islands, as well as exploring other attractive markets, such as areas of the mainland US, Puerto Rico, Japan, and the Philippines. So working on this team, we have Reza and Volker, our 2 PhDs, as well as 4 undergraduate mechanical engineering students. In total, we have over a decade of experience in smart grid communication and cybersecurity technologies, as well as vast experience in integration technologies for renewable energies. One of our undergraduates actually has 3 years of experience already interning at the Hawaiian Electric Company. So moving forward, with the funding we could receive from the CUP, we'll be able to create and implement all 600 of our systems that we would need for our pilot projects. We believe we have the right team in the right area to incubate and integrate this technology. And through our relationships with the University of Hawaii, Smart Grid Corporation, Hawaiian Electric Company, as well as the Accelerate UH program through Sultan Ventures, we believe we have the support and connections needed to achieve our project milestones. So we at Team Nest believe our innovative technology will offer more green and cost-effective solutions for grid stability and also integrating renewable technologies. Thank you for your time. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
I have a question. In terms of lifting the cap on the PV, it seems like it's more of an over-generation problem, just simply having too much solar on the grid. And this seems to be a power quality solution rather than a, are you going to turn on a load during when the panel is generating? I'm not quite seeing how it's going to solve that cap problem.
So our focus and the problem with that is more when, let's say there's a cloud coming over the island and all the solar PV generation on the island turns out. With our technology, we'd be able to address those issues pertaining to the cap, which would allow for more integration.
So how much of the cap is attributable to that kind of problem versus simply having too much solar on the system when there's no cloud? How much of the problem with the cap is attributable to the frequency response type of problems, and how much is due to simply having too much power on the grid during the middle of the day?
Well, I guess that's a really good question, but as a team, we haven't, I guess, looked into where it falls in where the cap has with our technology and the production and curtailment issues.
Maybe to add to that, since we have the load identification, we can actually shift the load profile from the evenings to the afternoon. So say in the evenings when people come home and want to take a shower, that's when when the water heaters start turning on. We can then, because in prediction to these load profiles, we can shift the water heater usage to the afternoon before the people come home and use the water heater storage, store the energy, and then when people come home, there's less demand.
Trying to reduce or increase load during the solar times. Okay.
Could you talk a little bit more about the economics in terms of, you mentioned $100 per home. That didn't seem to cover the cost of all the electronics I saw and the cost of labor to install them, but talk about the overall kind of life cycle of the economics and who's paying for what versus who benefits. Because at the beginning, the utility benefits, but then ultimately, hopefully, the consumers benefit through lower costs. But talk about how this is going to get implemented economically.
Okay, so the $100 from the consumer, that actually just covers the hardware. The main revenue stream will come from the utility, who will pay for these added values to their system. So instead of actually having the oil generators to account for grid instabilities, they will use our system instead to provide these grid instability. So they would be willing to pay us as an aggregator to provide these services. And the consumers will benefit in terms of cash incentives every year based on how much load we're actually controlling in the households, but also through the use of our metering systems, our cloud services, they'll be able to have more vision on what's going on in their houses. From some of the consumers we've talked to right now, so in Hawaii, we don't really have smart meters right now, like you have in California, so people don't know how they use the energy in Hawaii. So using smart meters, a lot of people are actually interested in getting smart meters right now.
We have them here, but people still don't know. So.
So then, is your system then, you have to use the meter that you have actually created, or is it interoperable with a variety of off-the-shelf smart meters that are available right now? Because a lot of utilities are shifting to do some of their load control through, say, Honeywell or Nest or whatever meter happens to be at the home to do load shifting for things like HVAC control. But more importantly, do you have to install your own meter? Is that part of the savings, or can you work with any meter?
It would not work with any meter. So our energy meter is actually sampling at a very high resolution. It's sampling at over 1 hertz at the circuit breaker level. So we need that kind of resolution to see which loads are currently in use. Anything slower than that, and we can't really extract which machine is running at what time. But if a device has that resolution, then we plan to implement the forward compatibility to use existing devices to save on money at that point.
That has to wrap up our questions for now, but another big round of applause. All right. And our next team up will be SolFox.
Good evening. So, we're all good Californians here. We're all passionate about the environment, technology, solar energy. So today, imagine that you are ready to go solar. Maybe you're wondering if you could save some money on your electricity bill by adding solar panels on your roof. Or maybe you just want to do something good for the environment and produce your own clean energy. So in that case, what can happen? Well, you can either be contacted by telemarketing or door knocking, or you can do your own research on the internet. Go on Google and search for best solar company in Berkeley. Click on get a free quote. Then, within 2 minutes, you'll get phone calls from Sungevity, SolarCity, SunPower, sales consultants asking you tons of questions on your house, type of roof, your electricity bill, your 12 last months of electricity consumption, your household, number of children. Choose one of them, or the phone calls, site visits, and 4 months later, maybe you'll have a solar panel on your roof, or maybe you will have given up during this process. And today, 91% of people do give up during this process. So setting solar panels is hard. It's a complicated process, both for the customer and the solar company. Not only the user experience is terrible, but it's also extremely costly for solar companies. Today, it costs about $5,000 to acquire each new customer. So to drive down the cost of solar energy, there is a need to reduce this customer acquisition cost. So indeed, for the past years, the cost of solar has been falling. But this has been due to huge reduction in hardware costs. The price of the hardware, the panel itself, now is much cheaper. However, there has been little to no innovation in the soft costs. And today, these soft costs represent 64% of the total installed system costs. So today, if we want to avoid this plateau in price and keep reducing the cost of solar energy, we need to find innovative solutions to drive down these soft costs. So customer acquisition is a huge part of this soft cost. And there is a need today to find solutions, but it's not only a need today, it's a priority. As Peter Reeve, CTO of SolarCity, said just back in November, we feel really good about installation costs. It's customer acquisition costs that we're really focusing on. So SolFox designed innovative solutions to transform and simplify this solar sales process. The opportunity that we see here with SolFox is in large solar companies' existing customer data. These companies have been selling solar for the past 4 to 5 years. They've been gathering tons of data on their customer. And with SolFox, we're using this data to understand better how people choose and use solar energy, and we're informing the sales process.
So let's meet Sally. Sally's a homeowner, she has a family, and she's decided she wants to go solar. So she goes online, fills out an online quote, puts in her last month's bill and a zip code. So today, within 2 minutes, you get a call from a sales rep and begin this arduous process that we saw before. But these solar companies have so many existing customers, it's very likely that they've seen someone like Sally before. So we have all this data on electricity consumption, solar production, demographics, sales data, who bought solar, when and why, on their existing customers. So with SolFox, we use advanced machine learning techniques to sift through this data, and from this small amount of information that Sally provides us with, we're able to give her tailored, personal information about how she uses energy and how solar can work for her right up front at the start of the sales process. So information on energy usage, accurate estimations of savings, what system will work best for her. Typically, this information gets to the customer after 3 phone calls right now. So clearly, this provides value for the prospective solar customer, giving them this information up front, reduces the amount of data that they're required to input, and reduces the time to get to that final quote. For solar companies, clearly, more informed, engaged customers is going to lead to a lower drop-off rate. Additionally, while we can provide insights to prospective solar customers, we can provide insights to solar sales teams about where their customers are and what makes a good solar customer. So this is real data from a pilot project we've run on the likelihood of solar leads to go solar. So all these tools help improve the customer experience for prospective customers and reduce the customer acquisition cost of solar. So how do you solve this problem at the intersection of energy, data analytics, and solar sales? We think we have the right team to do it. So Caroline and myself, both current PhD students here at Berkeley, with a background in optimization and data analytics for the smart grid. Nick has a wealth of experience in the solar sales process and product leadership. So we think we have the right team to succeed. We're also very lucky here at Berkeley to have a fantastic wealth of talent and expertise at our disposal. So we have excellent advisors helping us out in both the business and technical parts of the project. We also had a huge number of students being really excited and interested to be involved and work with us at SolFox, and they're really helping us bring it to life. So this idea actually came out of the Powerhouse Solar Hackathon, which we won. And we've had numerous successes since then, joining the Citrus Foundry Accelerator, Launch Accelerator program here at Berkeley. In terms of early product development, we have initial pilot projects with Sungevity to prove out the value of our technology. We're also partnering with Comwatt and Tendril, who have large amounts of customer data, which we need to improve the accuracy of our algorithms. Our customers are going to be these large integrated solar companies, and we intend to license our software to them. In terms of the size of the opportunity, the DOE estimates that there'll be 500,000 new solar installs by 2020. If we can bring this customer acquisition cost down by 40%, it's a $1 billion opportunity. So why SolFox? So customer acquisition costs in the solar industry are ridiculous. With SolFox and data, we can improve the customer experience and reduce these costs of customer acquisition. We can empower more people to go solar and accelerate our transition to a clean energy future. Thanks very much.
Could you describe a little bit more? I like the concept. I just would like a little bit more on what exactly it does and how it works and what data it's going through and et cetera.
Sure.
A little more detail.
Yep. So we have large existing data set of the solar company's existing customers. So we use that to learn and build predictive models about people we have not seen yet. So when we see a new customer, they come in with this small amount of data, we're able to tell them huge amounts about themselves. And so while that's very useful information for the customer, it's also very useful for these solar companies who are going out and trying to find customers. So being far more targeted when they're going to find solar leads or in their marketing. So it's a suite of software. Part of it is this kind of smart quote. There's also a lot of business intelligence software that goes along with it as well. So is that helpful? Yeah. To the customer or the? Yeah, so at the moment, they only find out what solar system they're going to get, how much they're going to save 3 calls down the line. So we're going to provide, with very high probability and accuracy, that to them as soon as they type in those 2 things into their online quote. Yeah.
So this is a very crowded market when it comes to customer acquisition. Pick My Solar, Energy Sage, kind of you name it. Can you talk a little bit about your differentiation versus a lot of the different customer acquisition software platforms that are being developed? Because I couldn't really see it.
Yeah, well, I think our main differentiation here is to use this large customer data set, learn from them, and give information to leads and the sales teams. And the main differentiation is like in the solar industry, using this data to understand better the customers is novel. So these websites or other customer acquisition or lead generators do not make use of past customer data. So the main differentiation here is that we can learn from past customers to give really good information to predict very good information on this customer and really engage him really early in the sales process.
I would also encourage you that it's not open yet, but there's the next round of the Sunshot Catalyst program.
We're applying.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Do the companies must have different pricing and different kind of market strategies? Do you have to tailor to each company's business model, or?
Sure. I mean, so the main strategies are kind of solar leases or versus kind of purchasing solar as well. So the main ones, they do have different business models, but they still have the huge same sales process to get to that end point. So the end point can be different, but the sales process itself is very similar across all the companies. Yeah.
And the $5,000, what percentage of the soft cost was that per customer acquisition?
I would have to check. I think it's...
So the cost of a solar system for a customer is about $25,000 to $35,000. So that's in the context of the $5,000 there. So it's probably about almost up to half, I'd say. Yeah.
A lot of the reasons that the process is a long and tortured one have to do with the customers not really understanding what they're asking about. They've heard from a neighbor that it's something they might want to do, but they yet don't understand the difference between a lease or a loan or some other vehicle. And they don't really understand even the architecture of their home, and a lot of roofs get disqualified and so on. How does your approach help with a lot of that? It seems like it provides a layer of benefit, but in terms of the 40% savings claim, that seemed like a leap of faith to me.
Sure. So certainly in terms of kind of qualifying people for solar, so at the moment you have to get 12 months of consumption data, find the roof, you have to be a homeowner. So what we can hope to do is kind of automatically qualify people and really get those high-value prospects through the sales process faster. So much of the cost associated here is because there's a lot of expensive data capture that goes on right at the start, kind of indiscriminately for all customers. And then when they drop out later, that cost is wasted money. So by shifting the expensive bits to higher value customers or those who are going to convert or we can predict that will work out, you can bring down those costs for everybody.
So I'm going to ask a kind of a variation on a question you've already heard. It's a cool idea. I like how it's helping customers reduce their anxiety about possibly getting into this, et cetera. But have you looked at how your particular approach kind of matches up against any one of these solar companies' current sales platform, whether, whatever CRM they're working with, whatever process they're working with? Have you looked into how you complement that, or are you just kind of sitting on top of it?
Sure. Can you address it? Yeah. So I think currently what these solar companies use is no specialized software, some kind of combination of Excel and Salesforce, and that's how they're managing it. So, and again, you're not going to change these large solar companies' sales process overnight. It's very hard. So what I envision is small steps, baby steps, right? So we build small functionality that can integrate seamlessly with existing workflows, and then over time we can work to change that whole sales process.
Another big round of applause.
Last but not least, we have Opus 12.
I love fossil fuels. I'm here at the Berkeley Cup competition, and I'm declaring to you my love for the dirtiest form of energy, Fossil fuels are abundant, they're dependable, and my favorite fossil fuel, petroleum, can be transformed into everything from transportation fuels to household products to plastics. So why am I here today? Well, it's because I know that my dear fossil fuels are fatally flawed, and I'll spare you the rehash of all of the challenges they represent. So what are we to do? Well, what if I told you that you could get the benefits of fossil fuels, but without the environmental cost? What if, further, you could make the very same transportation fuels and chemicals and plastics from the waste products that fossil fuels generate? I'm Nicholas Flanders, and along with my two co-founders from Stanford, we represent Opus 12, where we've developed a reactor that can transform CO2, water, and electricity into fuels and chemicals that are cost competitive with conventional products. Our device can bolt on to any existing source of CO2 emissions, so like an oil refinery or a cement plant. So how exactly does this technology work? Well, before I get into that, let me just pause and describe the impact here. This could offset up to 1/3 of global CO2 emissions at scale. We have two core patent-pending innovations that actually make CO2 conversion not only possible, but also cost competitive. The first is a set of catalysts that are actually able to split apart CO2 and water and then recombine them into more complex compounds. We've actually shown CO2 conversion to 16 different products. Things like ethylene, which you could use to make a carbon negative plastic, or syngas, which you could upgrade into diesel or high-value polymers. So the second innovation is that we figured out how to take those catalysts and plug them into one of these. What you're looking at is called a PEM water electrolyzer. Now, these things have been around for decades, and what they do is they split water into hydrogen and oxygen, and they do it extremely efficiently, and they do it in a very small footprint. And with our innovation, we can actually turn that into a CO2 conversion unit. Now, the power of this innovation is actually that if you look at the history of a lot of green chemistry innovations or renewable fuels technologies, where they really fall short is at the scale-up stage. Things just don't turn out like they did in the lab once you scale up. Well, by integrating into an existing reactor design, we're able to tremendously mitigate our scale-up risk while also taking advantages of all of the efficiency improvements and cost reductions that have happened with this technology. So how powerful is our reactor? Well, to give you a sense of scale, I think we're all familiar with the way that trees transform CO2 via photosynthesis. Well, with this platform, one module that you see here, this is a 4-module megawatt system. It's about the size of a checked-in luggage. It would be the equivalent of 38,000 trees. So think about the last time you tried to cram some extra stuff into your luggage before vacation. Now imagine fitting 64 football fields of forest into there. And that gives you a sense of the energy density. Now, I want to emphasize that this is not just an idea. This is not just a concept or a promising lab result. This is actually a real technology. And I actually have the prototype right here. There you go. Over the last year in the cyclotron road program up at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, we've actually gone from concept to this prototype. And it's 4 times more powerful than anything we've been able to find, whether published or even unpublished conference proceedings. So right there, that's the most powerful CO2 electrochemical reactor in the world. Now, while we've been busy developing this technology, we've also been out developing our business strategy and go-to-market perspective. And in so doing, we've actually conducted about 300 industry interviews. And what we found is that we're actually at the nexus of several pain points, whether it's customers who are looking to reduce their CO2 emissions, or who are looking for new sources of the products we can make, or even utilities who are looking for new sinks for their controllable loads. But really the best first customer that we're going after is someone who already makes the products that we can generate. An oil refinery is a great example. You take their CO2 emissions, you upgrade them into fuels, and then they can drop right into the supply chain that they already have. We've validated this value proposition time and again. Valero asked us, when can we have one? We've talked to Bayer Chemicals, who wants to put this into their high-value polymer production. And as a further point of validation, just last week, Shell agreed to fund an initial feasibility study through their Game Changer program. Now, I mentioned before some of the places where other green chemical startups have fallen short. Another place is that they're waiting for some giant market, fuels or chemicals, where they have to have very low margins and broad production and huge economies of scale just to compete. What we've done, actually, as through part of this customer discovery, is we've identified a few high-margin niche applications where we could actually start generating revenue right away. It turns out that a few industries really value on-site CO production to the point where right now their only alternative is that they have to buy very expensive and very dangerous canisters. We could produce it on-site from CO, and we validated that with Praxair, Air Liquide, and all the major gas delivery companies. What's even more exciting about that application is that we could actually use our pilot, which we're aiming to complete in 18 months, and actually generate revenue at that scale. It's a very fast timeline to market for a clean energy hardware innovation. So a little bit about us. We are uniquely positioned to bring this product to market. We combine cutting-edge expertise in CO2 electroreduction, reactor design, and we have some of the best technical advisors in the field. We've actually partnered with Proton Onsite, who's our manufacturing partner, to actually build the electrolyzer system. And we've also have process engineering expertise from Mark Warner, who's built multiple first-of-a-kind systems. Our traction has not gone unnoticed. We won the Department of Energy Flow competition. We were featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. We're now in Shell Game Changer, and we've been accepted into multiple competitive incubator programs like Cyclotron Road, StartX, and NSF's I-Core program. Our technology represents a tremendous opportunity. A $300 billion global market, a high-margin beachhead, and a massive reduction in GHG emissions. And you know what? It could actually be the platform of a new energy future where petroleum feedstocks are not needed anymore. So with that in mind, I think I found a way to get past my love for fossil fuels. Thank you.
All right. No.
Could you talk a little bit more about the cost of obviously the capital equipment at some level of scale that would be applicable to your plan and the process of the conversion as it relates to that?
Sure. So for our initial application, that on-site gas generation, actually that little guy generates CO for about a third of the cost that they're paying right now for the delivered canister. When we do modeling of the kind of the scaled up system, then it becomes about half of the current cost. We've also done a lot of modeling around ethanol as a good starting point. And with that, it would be about half the cost of kind of current market prices. One of the big advantages of plugging into those PEM electrolyzer systems is that they've already kind of come down the cost curve. So the actual capital cost doesn't really make a large impact on our cost.
So given that you're utilizing existing reactor technology, you mentioned 18 months as a timeline. Why 18 months? Why not sooner? And what are some of the key milestones in that 18-month journey?
Yeah, great question. And just by way of introduction, I'm Itasha Cave, and I worked alongside Kendra Kuhl at Stanford. We did our PhD in a basic science lab looking at these metal catalysts for this reaction. So to answer your question about scale up in 18 months, so that is a conservative estimate in time. We really want to make sure that we have good reliability. We've talked with Shell, and they said that, you know, they gave us some reliability metrics that they would want to see. So they'd want to see these long-term testing done. So included in our integration, we also have to do this long-term testing and also developing this commercial demo. So we'd actually want to sell this demo that we actually are making. So we added some time in there to, you know, get the user interface right and that kind of stuff.
Have there been any safety concerns on integrating this into the existing systems? Because I can imagine that, you know, these operators are probably under, you addressed a little bit about Shell, but I imagine this is a pretty difficult thing just to have as a bolt-on technology application for such sensitive equipment.
One good thing is, so PEM systems are used for water electrolysis, and they're making hydrogen right now, which is a highly explosive gas. And so they already have to deal with a lot of safety concerns with those systems. CO is a toxic gas, but similar to hydrogen, I think, in the flammability, and we'd have additional safety time. That's part of the scale-up window as well. I think with the going to an existing fuel producer, obviously they're very conservative about what sort of technology they're going to put at their plant. Safety is their first concern. And so when we scale up, we'd have to do a demonstration and really show them that the technology could work and talk with them about how it could integrate safely.
Are there any regulatory implications too? So is there?
Do you mean on the positive side?
I get the positive side of it. But more, are these facilities subject to any regulations that you might have to overcome just to have the technology existing on site? So I mean, there sometimes are. It goes back to the safety aspect, but and it could this be the answer is no. But are there any regulatory concerns that you might have on integrating the technology into the facilities, not the benefits of the regulatory impacts of, say, CO2 reduction?
We haven't, basically because it's so separate from the core operations, it's basically just you take part of their flue gas stream and have a water input, and it's kind of not affecting the core operations. But we are talking with the head of environmental engineering at the Benicia refinery, the Valero refinery over there, and again, he hasn't brought anything up. He's more excited on the positive stuff, but we'll keep that in mind.
So what's your income? Is it selling the unit or is it selling the gas? That's question number one.
So we've looked at both business models, and talking with our customers, it really depends on the customer. So like the larger players, the Valero, the Shells, they lean more to wanting to buy the unit. They would purchase a maintenance contract through us, but they want to have it on site and have more control over it. Other players, like some of the corn ethanol plants we talked to, and some of the other smaller players, they would want CO2 removal as a service, where we could go in and operate the equipment and kind of either through an offtake agreement, they would be interested in the product itself, or they would just be interested in doing something with their CO2. So it just depends.
Is my question.
For our initial, our very initial niche markets, it would be more of a CO2. It will actually be CO as a service. So we'd be doing on-site CO production. So we would be operating the equipment and just providing them an offtake agreement for the CO.
So if you do that, what's your break even? How long does it take you to basically earn back the cost of the initial equipment?
Our initial projections were about 3 years return on investment.
Okay.
Another big round of applause for Opus. Big round of applause for everybody in here. Thank you so much. Again, Department of Energy, everybody at Berkeley, my advisory board who put this competition together in every way. The amount of teamwork that I've seen has been humbling, and on behalf of the teams, again, a huge round of applause for all 7 teams who really, again, stood up and did a great job tonight. So thank you so much. I would encourage everybody who is ticketed to head over to the Burke Innovation Expo, which is in the Hearst Memorial Mining at this point. And from here out, tomorrow we will have an announcement of the winner at the Burke Energy Summit sometime between 11:30 and 12 in the morning. And from there, I wish you all a great night, and thank you again. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure.